there's like any funny moments or something like we want to include in there before we get
Yeah,
started, like me
for
trying to
sure.
pronounce your name.
Yeah, it is a tough one. That's why, honestly, the reason that I got named boss was one of the first years when I played for the national team. The goalie coach there was struggling to pronounce my last name as well, and he just kind of stumbled on it and said Bossino, and then he kind of shrunk that as boss. So boss kind of came from a mispronunciation of my last name. So and it stuck. Honestly, boss is kind of the one of the coolest names in sports to be nicknamed. So I think it's a pretty good one to have.
And,
But yeah,
and
it's
I was
something.
going to ask you that because, my assumption was like, okay, like she's a boss on the ice rink, but no, it's, it's just,
Yeah, a lot of people assume that, which is honestly, I'm glad that I do kind of convey that to people that it make it seem that way. But yeah, no, it really comes from mispronouncing the last name. But I'll take it. I'll use the side of, hey, I'm a boss in that. I own my space. I
yeah.
have control there. I'll run with that too.
All right. Well, welcome to the Twin Cities Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin King. My guest today is Marlène Boissonneau.
Yes.
He is the goalie for the Walter Cup champions, Minnesota Frost.
Thanks for having me.
So when I say Walter Cup champion, Minnesota Frost, how does that feel?
It feels surreal still. It's been for me, I won it last year. I'm not a part of the two-peat crew. For me, I had my first one last year, and it's still sinking in. And honestly, probably for the girls that have 2 cups to their name now is probably sinking in for them too, but it's definitely surreal. I think the longer this league develops, the more it feels like such an incredible honor because it's becoming such a difficult cup to win year to year, especially now with expansion teams. No, it's incredible. I'm very, very lucky to have been a part of that group, and yeah, it was a fun time.
Well, I want to introduce my listeners to you, and I want to start with who you are. So, when you think about yourself beyond hockey, how would you
Mhm.
describe yourself?
I'm definitely someone who's a lifelong learner and somebody who loves to share everything I learn. I'm outside of the rink. I still find my way into the rink by coaching, by mentoring. I do a lot of that stuff on the side. Even in season, I mentor anywhere from 15 to 30 goaltenders through virtual sessions and finding ways to give back. So I think outside of being an athlete, I'm still obviously very much so in the sports world, but instead of going through the journey myself, I kind of help others go through their own journey. And in that way, it kind of obviously keeps me in hockey at all times, which I love. But I think in another way, it allows me to give back to the sport that's given me so much. So I think that's something pretty special. And when people ask me, what I want to do when hockey is no longer kind of the route for me, whenever I choose to have kids or whenever I choose to move on, I always say I'm always going to be in hockey in some capacity because it brings a lot of joy, and I've built a huge liking for and instructing, mentoring, those kind of things because it's something special that I get to do now and all of the girls in the league. And yeah, outside of hockey, outside of the current rink scenario, that's what I do. Most of the time, I'm just a lifelong learner and a lifelong mentor.
What's what's kind of the differences between a coaching and mentoring and being coached and mentored coming back at you?
It creates a pretty naughty scenario. Like it's very knotted up together because when you play, you cannot think, especially as a goaltender, right? There cannot be the act of thinking whatsoever, even if it's half a second on the ice, because that half a second is not there. It's inexistent, right? Especially at this level of play. So finding the happy medium between coaching others, coaching myself, and also not coaching myself is a very happy medium. Our goalie coach here is phenomenal. Pete, he understands that I'm a big coach back home in Calgary, and I coach virtually throughout the season. So early in the season and even until last year, we had that discussion of, hey, when I'm on the ice, I don't want to coach myself. I don't want to be a coach whatsoever. So I'm just going to turn off that completely. And obviously, I could coach myself, but it's not something I want to do. And he's very, very good at just jumping on board and making sure I don't coach myself at all. So he fills in those gaps of moments where he can recognize, like, okay, I'm kind of playing with something in my head, then he goes and intervenes. So it's a very interesting balance to not coach myself, but yeah, as long as you surround yourself with the right staff, and we're very lucky to have that goalie coach here, it makes it easier.
So speaking of goaltending, what about that position felt like it was you? Like, what drew you to that position when you were growing up where you were like, "I wanna be a goaltender?"
It's a funny story. I wish I could say, "Oh, I just saw myself in there and I could do it," but it came out of a little bit of jealousy. My father and then my brother were both goaltenders. I'm one of 6 kids, and one of my older brothers, played in net, and I was kind of a little bit jealous. It seemed like a lot of fun, it seemed like a unique position, and I was kinda drawn to it, and my parents, luckily didn't shy away from throwing, their eldest daughter in there and seeing what that does, and a team of boys, because where I grew up, there obviously wasn't many girls, and I never looked back. I don't think I ever put player skates back on in the player position, at least, since. It's just something that came out of jealousy.
So so it wasn't anything that, like, matched your personality, like, like, "Hey, I'm a because that, it fits who I am." This was like, "I wanna do better than my brothers, and but here I am."
Yeah.
That was your
Yeah, it just
motivation.
seemed absolutely, and once I got in net, I remember it almost became a feud of it's boys shooting on me, and I don't want boys to score. Like, I'm one of the only girls, so it gives me a very unique position to almost kind of say, "Hey, you know what? When a girl's in net, you're gonna have more trouble." Right? So it just became a really fun thing, and obviously it grew on me very much so, and I got very lucky to obviously make the connections and make the jumps that I did at a young age, but yeah, it was just meant to be. Just right place, right time, and luckily my parents were down for the ride.
What a fun story. I mean, it certainly paid off, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Um,
lucky I did that. Honestly, I was, something I like to share every now and again is, I used to be very obviously heavy into, hockey, but I also was a very competitive, figure skater. So I did a lot of figure skating growing up, and I remember there was a time where my parents brought me, in their bedroom, and they sat me down and they said, "Hey, you're gonna have to choose between one of these sports," because ultimately they're obviously very expensive and they're very time consuming, and like I said, I was one of 6 kids, so there's only so much time I think that goes around, and thank thank God that I chose hockey, because I can't imagine a 5'10", 180-pound figure skater trying to get thrown in the air, so I'm really happy I made that choice and chose to become a goalie.
so as you're watching the Olympics now, figure
Yeah,
skating, you look at it with a different lens.
yes, very much so. They're incredible athletes, and I'm very happy I chose my passion in hockey.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about that is that you took your jealousy and turned it into something positive and used it in a healthy way, you know what I mean? Like, and you used it to motivate yourself and to take you to where you are right now.
Yeah, it's pretty special. I think my parents were very big on mentoring all of us, or at least kind of guiding us to always do the best in whatever we do. Whatever we choose, it's always give it your best, try to be, the best version of yourself in that field. And to me, it was almost like a no-brainer of if I'm gonna be a goalie, I'm gonna try to be the best. And it's always been something that drives me. Honestly, to this day, when I mentor kids, to me, it's I want to be the best mentor you've seen. I want to give you an approach and I want to give you tools that maybe you haven't seen, right? To keep something growing constantly and continuously getting better. And I think with that mindset that my parents instilled in us, it just kind of spoke for itself. When I chose that position out of jealousy and I really loved it, I think I was in a seat where I was just gonna ride it out. And with that value that I had of just trying to be the best, I think it just obviously very much so flourished and helped me get to here.
So goaltending is one of the most psychological demanding roles in sport,
Yeah.
right? So I want to take listeners inside of your space. So take me like what are you thinking when someone is getting ready to line up and hit a shot coming at you? And I don't know how many miles an hour, but a lot of miles an hour. Like what's
Yeah.
going through your mind?
Honestly, I don't think. It's very much so something where in goaltending you can't think, it's habits, right? So that's why practice is so important, especially for goaltenders, because you play like you practice and you practice like you play. It's not any different whether you're getting a shot in practice or a shot in a game. I think it very much so comes down to you can't think, your habits have to be thorough, and depending who comes down, I think I try to analyze, okay, they're gonna go up, they're gonna go down, or whatever the scenario might be for the unique player. But I think overall, the mental performance side of things is definitely unique because you have to have that trust and that confidence in yourself above all else. So for me, whenever I have a puck coming my way, I never really think about a net being behind me. It's more so, where is it going to hit me? How am I going to control the rebound? And I never think, oh, I'm protecting the puck from going through me and I'm making sure it doesn't go through me. It never goes through that mindset whatsoever. To me, it's always, how is it gonna hit me? Where is it gonna hit me? How much is it gonna hurt? Whatever the situation is, right? So it's very much so that mindset that I lean into because otherwise you're just playing kind of the chicken game, and there's no place for that, especially at this level.
So it doesn't, like, slow down in your mind, like, when someone's getting ready to hit it, like, it doesn't, like, in your mind, or does it just instinct still?
To me, it slows down a lot. At this level, I think it's something very special, and I think all goaltenders at this level have this feeling that the play slows down and everything is slow motion because of a few skills that you do. So, for example, when there's a pass going from one blade to another, your eyes connect to the next blade before the puck even reaches it. And in doing so, your brain really analyzes all of the picture of how far is that player, where is their stick, are they left-handed, right-handed, are they in a one-timer position, catch and release, things like that. So in a lot of ways, when you have those skills kind of already down, you're able to really slow it down. So to me, depending on the scenario, the play can be very slow in my mind, even though it's fast paced. So for sure, there's a lot of time to think if you wanted to. But when you put yourself in a position where you read the play ahead of time, all you have to do is kind of wait and make the save, if that makes sense. Obviously, that wait period is not very long, but for sure the play slows down. And I feel like that's one of those things where if the play feels very fast and you feel that you're catching up to it or constantly chasing it, then your skills are off or your timing is off. Because the play should feel very much so easygoing pace, always behind the puck instead of chasing it, if that makes sense.
Does it matter if you're at home or on the road?
Uh, yes and no. It depends. At home here at Tria, we have a unique rink where there's a window, and depending on the time of the day, sometimes there's going to be sun glaring onto the ice. So definitely, other rinks that don't have that sun glare take the cake. But I think genuinely, I don't think it makes a big difference as long as the rink is high quality rink. I definitely feel the difference between Tria, for example, and the Grand Casino Arena because the Grand Casino Arena, the lighting is incredible. So seeing the puck is that much easier. So you don't need to warm up the eyes in the first 5 minutes like you do at Tria, for example.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
those little difference makers are definitely noticeable. Um, but generally, rink to rink and ice to ice. We were at an outdoor rink actually last week on Friday, and that was particularly unique because then you're really outside, and I feel like that's more having fun and obviously an ODR style practice, so it's not as comparable. But definitely from rink to rink, I think it's pretty similar. There's definitely rinks that are a little bit bigger from NHL size, Olympic size, or other sizes.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, an ice is an ice, a stick is a stick, the gear is the gear. So generally speaking, they're pretty standard.
So, let's say you're playing in Vancouver or somewhere, so crowd and just any of those
Yeah.
elements, like, or, like, at home where you have support, of your fans, like, that doesn't factor in
It
your
it
how you.
factors. It factors in. It factors in. I think that's why having home ice advantage is such a reality because when you're at home, your fans are incredible and they cheer for you. And it obviously the positives are very much so felt, and when something goes wrong, that's not so felt. Versus if ever you play in a crowd like Montreal, for example, very much so known for their crowd and their fan base. If you do something wrong, they let you know. Versus if you do something wrong in Minnesota, you don't know about it because the fans aren't cheering that on that mistake, and they do the opposite. So definitely, from a motivational standpoint or that moment motivation, I think there's definitely a lot of advantage to home ice. But definitely when you play at a different rink. You just gotta find a way to just tune them out and just put yourself almost like muffles and those horse blinders,
Yeah.
and just find a way to just whatever's in front of you is what you got to focus on.
So how do you personally, like, regulate your adrenaline, like, to stay focused in those moments?
It's very interesting. It's a happy balance you got to find because ultimately your adrenaline is a good thing And I think where you really decipher elite athletes from not so elite athletes is when you embrace the nerves as being something that helps you. And when you recognize that the nerves are there to help you and they're there to make sure that your blood is pumping, to make sure that your eyes are aware and that the awareness is there, I think that's when you can really capitalize on those nerves and capitalize on that adrenaline. There's definitely times where I have noticed when you go on the ice for a warm up, your heart rate will be high for no reason. You're just skating on the ice, but it's just the atmosphere and the excitement in the arena gets your heart rate going. And it's very much so something that I've taken to be a really positive thing because to me, just the atmosphere gets my blood pumping and gets me going. It gets me very excited. And I think if you try to take that as a fear and you try to shove away the adrenaline and shove away the nerves and just think, "Oh, I'm not nervous," and you try to put it away, I think that's really when it's gonna almost be like a spring and it's gonna spring out on you. Versus if ever you embrace it and you say, "Hey, that's my body letting me know that there's something here that I really care for, and it's putting my body in a place where I'm gonna be able to do whatever I want and whatever I need to do out here," I think is really when you find that success piece out of nerves.
Do you think people anything about the goalie position that people misunderstand or maybe overlook?
Interesting. I definitely do think there's one actually, when a goalie makes a super big dramatic save, generally speaking, it's because 'cause they've done a mistake. A goaltender, the best saves that a goalie will do is the saves that look the easiest, because that means that the goalie's at the right place, the right time, and they do the right save technique. Usually, when they're doing a backdoor dive or something crazy, it's because they're not there at the right time. Obviously, that's situation based because there's scenario where players will make a phenomenal play and a goalie's only human, not a contortionist. But I will say when goalies make crazy, crazy saves, it's usually because they got into trouble and they've kind of put themselves there or something happened where they ended up there. So usually the easiest looking save is usually the best type of save. That's usually misunderstood.
Contortionist rings a bell because that's what comes to mind, just in terms
Yep.
of like what you have to do to block a shot. You have to, oh, that's a good one. Okay, so let's talk about poise. And so obviously this is something that you've developed over time. Um, what's a moment in your career where you had to persevere?
Oof, there's been many, many moments. I would say, at the risk of being vulnerable about it, I would say whenever I got released from Montreal. When I got released from Montreal, it was a unique scenario where, there's all sorts of reasons that went into it, but ultimately, it didn't entirely come down to skills. It really came down to game experience. And for me, I had come from a few years of injuries and a few years of battling being the goalie with the least amount of games and that being kind of an uphill battle and when I got released from Montreal, it really came down to I didn't have as much game experience as other goalies, and being released for that reason was extremely difficult. And to this day, it still almost makes me emotional to think about it because that was the peak of being unable to control something and still having to find a way to persevere and say, "Hey, you know what? My story's not done yet." Not knowing what that would look like, because all of a sudden I'm not on a team. It's halfway through most seasons, right? Because our releases happen usually end of November, almost in December. And so I was in a place where I didn't have a team for the rest of that season, and for me, I don't know why, I can't explain it, but as soon as I got back to Calgary, I rented ice, I got a coach, I was still going full steam, and a lot of people would have called me crazy because there was no team to chase at this point. There was no, um there was no sight as to what was gonna happen next, but I very much so I'm huge on manifestation and, putting your mind in a place where you're willing to accept things for what they are, and I think you're not gonna be ready to accept positive until you're open to it, and if you stay in a place where you're constantly negative and kind of a Debbie Downer and thinking, "Poor me, poor this, poor that," I think you're in a tough spot, but for me, I put myself in a place where I continued training, I continued doing so many things, even though it was crazy, and looking back, it is kinda crazy, but to me, through that perseverance, I got a call from Melissa about 2 months after I got released from Montreal, and they wanted me. To them, it was something where they had seen me, they had seen that I got released, and to them, it was a big thing. They wanted me on their team because they knew what I was able to bring, and I like to say it's a diamond in the roughs, and that's pumping my tires for sure, but to me in that moment, it was, really special because they saw what I saw in myself, and when I came here from day one, it was an incredible experience because they recognized that. But had I not persevered through that emotional roller coaster, I would have never had the opportunity to get called up by a team as phenomenal as Minnesota and ultimately win a Walter Cup with that team and be a huge piece of that team. So that to me was probably the biggest perseverance moment of my life, but there's definitely been thousands along the journey.
Speaking of that moment, what specifically, what did you learn about yourself in retrospect now?
I I've learned a lot about myself. I think the number one thing is, I definitely learned that I bet on myself a lot. And sometimes, I'm sure someday it won't pay out. In that case, it definitely paid out. I'm definitely somebody who, I believe in myself more than anybody else, and I've said that for a long time. To me, if somebody tells me, anything wrong, I seen this one video one day where, somebody had made a comment of saying, "Hey, if I tell you your blue hair looks weird," it's not gonna affect me because I have blonde hair, right? So, to me, for somebody to call out something that is not me feels silly. So, for me to be put in a place like the release from Montreal, for example, to me, it never affected me in the sense of I knew my skills were what they were, and being released never hurt me in the sense of confidence. I think my confidence was still very sky high. Um, so I think I just learned that I'm still my biggest fan. I'm still my biggest ego is still inside me somewhere is, throwing those pom poms around and really kind of getting the work done. And I think that's something that I'm very proud of. And definitely that perseverance and that resilience is something that is a huge asset of mine. And it's something I think that's going to give me a lot of success in hockey and obviously beyond, which is something special.
When you think about your career in general, just was there someone who believed in you in a way that really mattered to you, or particularly in a moment where you needed it and maybe that may have been the moment, but if not, was there other moments?
There's definitely been a lot of people along the way carrying that kind of those pom-poms, those cheerleader pom-poms. I think I'd be insane to not say my parents, and I think it's a very easy thing to gravitate to as a player to, talk about your parents, but I think to me it's something special. My parents, I think to this day, still see me as that little girl who once strapped on the pads for fun. But I think the special thing is they've seen every ups and downs in this journey. And I don't think there's a single girl in the PWHL that hasn't had those down moments. And I think they've seen me overcome each and every one of them. So it's very fun that in a moment like that, you have somebody who's seen all of those parts of your life and they just see it as, oh, you'll overcome this one too. There's no doubts in our mind because we've seen you do it 1,000 times. So I think that very much so helped that particular scenario, but most certainly, there's been a lot of people. I've had coaches in my back pocket that have been incredible. I have a mental performance coach that's been unreal in making me kind of be okay with, the journey and kind of the ups and downs of it, and I've had incredible coaches along the way, coaches that I've had since, my goodness, almost 10 years now, some more, some, minor hockey coaches that still stay in touch, things like that. I think it really takes a village. I know it's a classic statement, but it really takes a village to be able to achieve such success. I never would attribute it just to me and my ego and my, determination. There's been a lot of people along the way. My partner, my boyfriend, he's been with me for, my gosh, very, very much so a lot of those moments as well. So he's seen that, perspective as well, and I think it's very much so a village. It's a village that very much so built that, that power inside me that has that mindset of, "You know what? I'll figure it out. It'll work out," and yeah, that would be where I would attribute all of that to.
That's awesome. I wanna talk about now the Walter Cup.
Yeah.
So, um, what did it feel like to win it? Not necessarily as a player, but just as a person, like, what did that mean to you?
It meant the world. To me, I think every player has a unique reason why that Walter Cup is very special to them. To me, it was a cherry on top on the journey that I had been having, especially that season, but all of the seasons prior that kind of led to it, right? I was in a unique place where I went from, being at Cornell and having some of the best career moments of my life to being on the national team to having all sorts of extremely high moments and I think the Walter Cup came in a year where, to be honest with you, I faced the lowest lows. And when I hoisted that cup, I think I was more emotional than ever in the sense of not only did I win, the greatest title in women's hockey, um, professional sports, in my opinion at least, but it very much so was a huge moment of, you know, like it's hard to find the word to this day. I'm struggling to find the words to kind of put it, in perspective, but to me, it was almost like a breath of fresh air and an opportunity to kind of, breathe and release so much tension and so much, feeling of I need to be on my toes. I need to constantly be in game 7 and needing to constantly prove myself. I think it was a moment of, wow, like it's just a little stepstone where you realize, okay, I'm on the right path and I've done the right thing. And I think there's times in your career where you kind of got to look back and say, hey, that was awesome. Like tap on the back, like you did it. And hoisting that cup was not only such an incredible achievement as a team, this team is incredibly special. They embraced me from day one. But I think from a personal side too, it was something that I will take forever as an incredible feeling from, being released to winning the cup. I don't know how many people have done that in their life, even on the NHL side. I know they've been there for a long time. I'd love to hear who's been released and came back and won a cup. I think that'd be pretty unique, to see, but for me, on a personal note, it was something incredibly special. Very difficult to put into words,
Mhm.
but from a team standpoint, it's something, my gosh, forever tied to these girls and forever being World Cup champion, we'll forever have the same ring somewhere in the world hanging out. But yeah, it's really, really special.
As the clock wind down, I always think about this when I'm watching, like, championships on TV, and it's, like, 20 seconds, and the game's in hand, like,
Yeah.
are you processing, like, "Okay, this is about to happen?" Like, what are you thinking as the clock
Yeah.
goes down? What's going through your mind?
Well, to us, it went into overtime. It went into overtime, so it was very much so it could have gone either way. For us, we were home. So we were home in this overtime game, and if we won it, we won it. It was, something incredible where it was a 5-game series, so whoever won that 3rd game would, take it, and we were, neck and neck or 4th game, I guess, we were neck and neck with Ottawa every single game. Every single game was the same score. If I remember correctly, it was 2-1. Every single game went into overtime, and it was unreal, the atmosphere that you had in that building. Um, it was something that I don't know about the rest of the girls on the team. I do know actually a lot about a lot of them, but we had that belief that we were not gonna go back to Ottawa because if we lost the game, we had to go back to Ottawa to try to win it again. We all had the belief of, "We're home. That cup is staying here. That cup is not leaving this building." And it was something really special. Obviously, it's in overtime, so I wasn't playing that game. I was just on the bench dressed and looking at the clock and just seeing it kind of through the lens of the jumbotron and seeing the game because you're obviously the angles when you're on the ice, you can't see both nets. And I remember seeing the Ottawa goaltender and just looking at that side. And when that goal went in, it was just like I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like nothing else matters. All of a sudden, you've done it, and you've done it with a group that's unreal. And you've done it with so much passion and so much hard work, and it's such a disbelief when it really happens. We have those confettis going off, and we have this, and we have that, and we have the fans going absolutely ballistic in the stands, and it's just incredible. Yeah, it's a memory that is so special, and we still see the video, obviously, every now and again pop up through socials or some sort of motivational, aspect, and the feeling is real, and it's still there every time. You just see that goal going in, and it's just that kind of belief of, "Oh my gosh, we did it. We did it." Like, it's
I love it.
again, that's so hard to put into words, just incredibly special.
So, this is kind of a two-part question, but how did you celebrate? And then whenever the next time you had that moment to yourself, whenever you were alone after the
Yeah.
celebration, like, what were you thinking? Like, once everything calmed down for a minute?
The celebration was extremely special. To me, my family wasn't able to be here, which was really tough because we were obviously on the road for a game, home for another game, and my parents are from New Brunswick and my partner's from Calgary and he works there. So it was very difficult to get family local through those moments. Um, but it's really special because once the celebration starts and you're on the ice, you have your phone. Your phone is handed to you or you find your phone, and for me, I called my parents. I FaceTimed my parents, and I did a joint FaceTime with my boyfriend and his parents, and I was on the phone with them, and honestly, I cried. To me, it was in that moment, it was such an emotional, disbelief of, "Oh my gosh, what a crazy year. What a crazy experience," and I came out on top, and our team came out on top through the highest high, lowest lows. We had to earn that playoff spot. We weren't guaranteed a playoff spot till the very last game when it depended on other teams losing. We were never guaranteed a playoff spot, and somehow, some way, we won it all. And it was just a disbelief from the first get go. And I think the celebration on the ice was, you skate around, you hug your teammates, everybody's crazy laughing, crazy happy, families come onto the ice. It's just such an incredible moment. And then obviously there's the moment where the cup is handed to you and you get to do your lap with the cup and you get to hoist it, kiss it, and do something that you only ever dreamt of, but the dream for us obviously was seen through the lens of the NHL and having the crazy belief that one day we'll play in the NHL as obviously as a young kid. And for that moment to be real and to be something in a professional women's league was something, so many emotions, so many thoughts in that moment. I think when you lift that cup and you kiss that cup, time goes by at 0.2x speed. Like, it's so slowed down. But yeah, no, an incredible moment. It's something so special. We were even told, "Careful, there's confettis on the ice. If you obviously skate on one of them, you're gonna tumble and you're trying to hoist the cup." I remember thinking, "Wow, I never even thought about the confettis." Like, that to me
Yeah.
was I skated through them. We all did, right? So it was never, you're so in the moment and you just lift that cup and you realize, like, wow, that is a lifetime of effort, lifetimes of, relentless pursuit of trying to find the best version of yourself, and that is awarded with one of the most phenomenal cups to ever be handed, over. So something incredible, something so special, and obviously we had a lot of celebration as a team. The the floor of the dressing room had like 2 inches of champagne just floating, and it's a carpet, so I can't even imagine what the cleanup process was. It was definitely an incredible celebration. I think it's something special to do as a team. It's just beyond words. Obviously, a lot of things that will never see the light of day, and a lot of things that were celebrated publicly. And I think we were all very, very proud of that moment. And obviously, it's something special that you get to celebrate with as a team. And obviously, when all of the celebration moments are over and you're at home, and for me, I was at home in my bed and just thinking, like, wow, like, does it get better than this? Like, how am I gonna come back? And, how am I gonna top this? And it's just something incredibly special. And I remember just obviously calling my family and, I don't know, being in that kind of wow moment for a very long time, a very, very long time. And even to this day, I have some young girls reaching out to me and asking so many questions, and they address me as a Walter Cup champion. And to me, it's still something surreal. I think it might forever be, because of the process that led to it. And obviously, it's a huge thing. It's something so incredible and hard to grasp and hard to really process. I think I've come to understand that that is forever a title that's gonna be followed, after my name. But no, it's something special. It's truly one of the best things I've ever achieved.
So, what advice would you give to leaders, whether in or outside of sport, who want to go on their own championship run with their respective teams? What advice would you give them?
I would say you have to be your biggest cheerleader and your biggest critic, and in doing so, you have to be your biggest fan. I think, I can only speak from my experience, and to me, I've obviously seen the lowest lows and the highest highs throughout my career, and I still do. And I would have never made it through the lows if I didn't truly believe in myself and if I didn't believe in my success more than anybody else. And a lot of people would have told me you're crazy, and some people have told me, like, "Hey, do you think you might wanna move on and go, I have a pre-med degree, and go to med school." Like, to me, it never really came to mind of, "Yeah, let me retire and go to med school." It's always been, "No, I have something in hockey, and it's a crazy dream, and it's something incredibly hard to do, when you look internally, but to me, the real big advice I would say is be your biggest fan. If you don't believe in yourself more than anybody else, more than your parents do, more than your coach does, you know, you won't succeed. You really have to believe in yourself, even when people tell you no, even when you don't see the success that you expect, you have to still believe in yourself. Believe in yourself till you choose to move on. The moment that you stop believing in yourself, the moment that you have those self-doubts, I think is the moment that you have, one foot out the door.
Absolutely. You talked a little bit earlier about just the PWHL, and really the growth of it has just been
Yeah,
fantastic to be a part of. So
yeah.
when you were growing up, did you ever imagine that there would be a league like the PWHL? And now that there is it everything that you thought it would be?
It's more than what I thought it would be. I think it's when I grew up, I genuinely thought I would play in the NHL. To me, that was a dream that kind of just stuck. Obviously, I grew up with, playing on boys teams, so to me, it always felt like the avenue I would go through. I eventually went to prep school and played with a girls' team, so I think that's when the vision changed a little bit into wanting to play long term with girls and always having that kind of professional aspect. I don't think I ever knew what it looked like, and looking back, I can't believe how I wouldn't say how naive I was because I don't think that's the right word, but I believed in something that didn't exist. I truly did, and I believed I'm gonna play hockey forever, and that's gonna be something that I do. I never really kind of put logistics behind it or reality behind it because obviously back then there was a league, but they didn't make money in that league. They more so really played, they paid to play,
Mhm.
being the WHL, the NWHL, and there wasn't really much structure and realistic long-term avenue through there, but I played for my provincial team for 6 years. I played for the national team for many years following that. I was lucky enough to go to an incredible college, being Cornell University, and I think for me, I never really saw an end to that. When I graduated, the month I graduated from Cornell was the month that the CWHL folded and that the professional leagues had folded. So to me, I think that was the first little bit of moment that I realized, like, "Oh, like, okay, where am I gonna play now?" But I still had this vision of, like, well, there's professional teams in Europe. I'll go play in Europe. Right? To me, was never really entirely truly bothered by that. I always thought I would find a way. Luckily, of course, I was a part of the PWHP and the association that um, kind of got together to really build what we have now, which was very fortunate. I was in the right place, right time to make that happen. Um, and it became something more than I think any of us ever believed we could create. The PWHL is something that um, you know, our young selves couldn't have dreamed of. It's something that is beyond what we could have ever expected. When you compare it to the NHL, obviously it's a different breed, but it's the same status in terms of building dreams and building true um, potential of jobs, true potential of careers for girls, and um, motivation for these girls to become the best that they can be in sports, and not only in hockey. I think it's gonna create a lot of momentum for so many more professional leagues to get created, and we've already seen that, right? We've already seen so many other professional leagues be created, but the most special thing I think I see now is you see young girls, and they have those signs saying, "I'm gonna play in the PWHL. I'm gonna be a 2042 draft pick," or whatever they come up with. And it's dreams that will feed that grassroots level, um, and now the entire quality is gonna be my gosh, the sky is the limit for the quality of the sport and what it's gonna be in 10 years. I think we're gonna be extremely blown away because now the girls that begin in this sport, they wanna play professionally versus whenever I graduated university, everybody in my class, minus 2, decided that, they're not gonna play anymore. To them, they wanted to do something that made real money and that they were gonna be able to start their lives, was really kind of the words that were being thrown out there. Versus now it's, "Hey, I'm playing the P-dub. I'm going and that's my dream, so I'm gonna work my tail off from the minute I start." Right, and we already see that. I coach some young girls that are U11, U9, and they have that dream, and they're hungry to learn. They wanna know how to get there, and it starts at such a young age, so I think those young athletes and everybody else too is just gonna raise the bar, and by the time we see all those athletes come in the PWHL world in 10 years from now, I think the quality of play is gonna be incredible, and I'm super excited for that.
I mean, it's really cool to see, like, I mean, even with the WNBA, the PWHL, like, all like, just kinda concurrently going through this shift, like,
Yes.
which is positive, which is just great to see.
It's incredible. There's a professional baseball league now, professional soccer league. I think I saw a rugby league being professionalized. There's so many
Volleyball.
new Yes, there's so many incredible professional leagues now being created, and that's jobs, that's dreams, that's momentum for just, having the opportunity to say, "Hey, you know what? I can play professionally too, and I can make a career out of this if I choose to, and if I obviously put in the work and whatnot." But it's something incredibly special, and to me, the biggest thing is seeing young girls say that one day they wanna play pro is it's incredible. It's something so special just knowing what the sport gives you, both from an emotional standpoint and just from building character is just yeah, it's beyond words.
So speaking of role models, so you're a role model not only to the kids, but to their families as well, you know? So in what ways does their energy and admiration, like, shape or make you better?
In every way, in every way. I think the athletes that I get to coach and I get to mentor, motivate me, and it's something that is kind of hard to understand why it motivates me so much, I think, and I don't think I've come to really understand the extent of it, but I think the reality is people of young age tend to have a lot of judgment because they're very honest, right? And I think when you have young athletes that U11, U13, U15 age that look up to you and they see you as somebody who is one of the best in the sport and sees you as somebody who's truly a pro, it really puts things in perspective where they don't know the difficult times. They don't care about the difficult times. They're the most excited about the success, and they're the most excited about seeing everything through rose-colored glasses, and they just see the joy of the sport, and I think through that lens, I'm able to really embrace and be excited for the positives, and I think that is worth all of the heartache and all of the difficulty and all of the sacrifices that come with. So I think in a lot of ways, they just keep me motivated and driven to just chase those positive moments because that's really what truly matters in the sports is everything along the way that is positive, they all accumulate to something just incredible throughout the journey, regardless of all the sacrifices and difficult things you go through.
What do you like to do outside of hockey? When you're not playing hockey and coaching and mentoring and
I
lifting and all those things?
I love being outdoors. I hike a ton. I'm from, New Brunswick. That's where I'm born and raised, and obviously I still have a home there. It's something really special to me, and that's outdoors. I've moved to Calgary after college to, obviously have more training facilities, and there's the Rockies, the Canadian Rockies there. And I'm always in the mountains. You can find me in the mountains. I think that's some of the best conditioning you can get because it really will kick your bum every now and again when you try to hike that altitude, but I think that's what I do, and I spend a lot of time with family. To me, it's the most special things, of the off season is spending time with family because during the season, you don't get to see them much. To me, I go months without seeing, my family. I usually see them twice a year just because of how time consuming training is and playing, and then I see my boyfriend, my gosh, once every couple months as well just because he's working full time, um, back in Calgary to be able to obviously sustain our future because my salary is good and all with this league, but it's not enough to set us up for a future like it would in the NHL, right? So I think there's a lot of sacrifices that go that way. So family and just relationships in general are definitely hindered by that. So when I'm not at the rink, when I'm not playing hockey, I'm just spending time with family, whether that's making dinner, making breakfast, just reading together, watching a movie together, going for walks. Little things are really what brings me the most joy.
This segment is sponsored by Kowalski's Markets, where it's all about the joy of good food. So I end every episode with when I ask my guest what's their Twin Cities hidden gem, and it can be a place, event, or an experience that you think more people should know about.
I recently went to a restaurant called Gus Gus in St. Paul. and I was blown away by the food. I would love to go there again and again and again. So if you haven't checked out Gus Gus, I would say you have to check it out. It's something that we just stumbled upon. The food is incredible. I think it's a little hidden gem. It's very hard. There's not many seating, so you gotta you gotta plan ahead. But that's 1000% the move that I would
What
suggest.
kind of restaurant?
It had honestly, it's a very unique menu where you're not able to change, the ingredients, like, the burger comes as is, you're not able to make adjustments to it.
Yeah.
When I was there was gnocchi, there was some mushroom dish, there was a burger, and, what was it? Like a pasta dish of some sort. We ordered a couple things, to kind of share amongst ourselves, but I think it's a unique rotating menu, if I were to guess.
Okay.
So that's 1000% something that's up my alley. I love excitement, I love things like that. I don't have food, restrictions, so I'm happy with whatever they're serving me, and it's mind-blowing food. It's very good food. Very good food.
Well, Marlène, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Marlène Boss, I'm gonna call you Boss. I really appreciated your time and just love learning about you and hearing all these stories and all this great advice that is going to help so many people that are listening to this episode. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. I'm always happy to share. It's something that I think needs to get out there, and just getting to motivate the next generation is something really special that I get to do through these podcasts. So, thank you so much for having me.
Well, join me next time on the next episode of Twin Cities Leaders for more information. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube and Spotify.